Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning for our webinar. We're going to be talking about staying productive at home with Microsoft 365 and best practices for effective large-scale remote work. I hope everyone's doing well, by the way, and staying safe. We'll cover just a couple of housekeeping items first. We are recording the webinar. We'll be sure to make the recording and slide deck available for you after the webinar. We'll try to keep the session to 45 minutes. We have a lot of people signed up today. We have a lot to cover. I know this is a really important topic right now. We want to make sure we cover all the content we have, but we also want to address all your questions. So we'll get to the content first, but then we'll stay as long as you're willing to stay, as long as we need to answer the questions. So please don't hold back. Send in your questions in the GoToWebinar control panel in the questions part, and we'll get to as much as we can. And like I said, we'll stick around if you will. And with me today, I have Daniel Cohen-Damiani and Adam Levithan. So Daniel, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and we'll get started.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sasha, and good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Daniel Cohen-Damiani. I'm a partner here at Rhythm Digital, and I have a long experience with collaboration solutions. Started working with SharePoint way back in the days in 2002, and very passionate about digital transformation. And my expertise span Office 365, SharePoint, Dynamics, and I've always been passionate about productivity in the modern workplace and what some people call Work 2.0. A little tidbit about me, I started working with Microsoft SharePoint when nobody could actually spell it. So we've seen a lot of evolvement in the technology, and we're going to talk a lot about what we can help people today as we're all being sent home and have to stay productive. So I'm excited. I'm actually dialing you here from my house in Bethesda, Maryland. Like many of you, we're stuck at home and practicing social distance. So with me, I'm joined with Adam. Adam, why don't you say hello?
Hello. Oh, sorry, that joke won't work in a web conference. Thanks, Daniel. So for me, almost as many years as Daniel, working on collaboration. For those who don't know, SharePoint actually, you couldn't spell it because it didn't exist when Daniel started working with it, the phrase, and the P is capitalized. Anyway, what I mainly focus on here with them, I'm a practice manager, helping communication and collaboration, building intranets, really, working on strategy and change management. It's not just the technology, it's really the people. And I think we're going to express that in today's session because it's about how we all work together, and the technology helps us, but it's how you as an organization put forward all of those expectations that is really important. And speaking of that, let's talk about what the expectations are today. So we're going to talk about working from home, where we believe, and we'll talk a little bit deeper about this, in sort of three major areas: people, data, and content. And so we're going to talk about how to keep everyone connected, about how to access data, about sharing without any problems inside and external, about security that wraps everything that we just talked about in people, data, and content. There will be key tips throughout, don't worry, but we will review them again at the end. And as Sasha said, because of the importance of this, we've seen this with our current clients and new clients coming in over the last 2 to 3 weeks to get implemented video conferencing and communication solutions. We are going to stay not just the 15 minutes, but as long as it takes to answer the questions. And with that, enough about us. We actually have a little few polls to ask you questions, so you're here spending your time, that we can find out about you and tailor this conversation to you from the beginning. So the first poll is going to be just pretty simple. Are you already on Office 365, or you're here as, say, Microsoft 365 too? We're just going to wait about 30 seconds for this. Looks like the vast majority of people are on Office 365, so that's great. So we'll be talking about how to take advantage of what you already have. And for those who are or not, there are still opportunities for the next 6 months to take advantage of this, actually a lot of the functionality at no cost. All right, so that's great. 90% of the attendees are on Office 365. So the next question is, what other systems are you using? Because just because you're in Office 365 doesn't necessarily mean you're only using Office 365 solutions. So
that's interesting, Adam. We see a lot of people still using Skype for Business,
right?
But almost 40% are Skype consumer. So, you know, we're going to talk a lot today about the advantages of why Microsoft Teams is superior, and maybe now is a good time to make a move. And, you know, interestingly enough, about few folks are using Zoom, WebEx, and other platforms. So
Thanks so much. And yeah, if in the chat, not in the question, if you want to put what those other systems are, that'd be great. All great solutions. Today we're going to be focused on hacking and you know, with the Microsoft stack. All right, one last poll right now, which is, you know, this is something new for a lot of organizations. Us at Witham, we've been doing work from home, telework for a long time. That's part of our job, is to use the systems to the best. And really interesting. So it looks like a lot of people are already have policies in place, about 2/3 so far, and 1/3 that's not. So hopefully we'll be able to assist in that 1/3. And certainly for the people who don't usually do work from home, if you have any questions, again, about adoption, change management, how to get your employees to embrace it, we'll be talking about those things, but feel free to put those in the questions, because it's not just about technology, it's about getting everyone to use the solutions the same way. That's the only way to keep it together. All right, thanks so much for all of that participation. Now we'll just talk a little bit about our view of the world. So for us at Witham, you know, I mentioned it before, we're talking about connecting people, data, and content. A lot of organizations that are on this call, I guess that was another question we can ask, but it looked like professional services and not-for-profit organizations and industries widespread. But in almost every industry, the people are your intellectual property, are the important part of your organization that will move you forward and differentiate you from other organizations. And so we focus on those 3 areas: people, data, and content. And how we support them is by looking at your process, by applying now in every single solution, there's intelligence. And that isn't just our intelligence, but actually artificial intelligence, and being able to streamline those redundant jobs that your professionals could be doing more efficient, productive, and profitable activities. And then today's webinar itself is really talking about mobility. Mobility is the ability that your work is your laptop. I have certainly been on my couch. I remember when my daughter was 4 years old and she asked, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm building a website." And she said, "Is that like a castle?" Yeah, that's exactly what it is. But the point being, because it was my laptop and the work we do, I could do my work from anywhere with the internet. And then what we're talking about is Microsoft 365. And so I'd be curious in the chat if people are aware of this phrase or not. But what Microsoft has done is taken their classic operating system from the desktop all the way to the cloud and connected it all together, not just in licensing, but in features and tool sets. And that's only going to get stronger and stronger. So Microsoft 365 is your whole productivity suite. And yes, you can actually buy it together so that you have your licenses for your operating system, and then all of the productivity features that we're going to talk about this. So that is, a piece, the whole kit and caboodle that surrounds everything we're going to talk about today. Now,
and then an important point, Adam, if I may interject, of course, is security is important in the middle as well. I'm sure you're going to talk about that, and we feel like security becomes important as people are now outside of the office, and organizations want to ensure that while we enable this remote work capability, that it stays secure.
Exactly, and we'll talk about that in detail. So actually, Daniel, on to you. Let's get into some of the meat of this that people are really interested in, the tips and tricks. So why don't you kick us off?
Absolutely. Thank you, Adam, for this great introduction. And I'm going to take you for some ideas and tips and tricks on how to stay efficient for yourself, but how to make your workforce efficient as we work from home. And I have to tell you, for the last week, I've been working from home. I'm not used to that. So it's been a lot of a personal experiment for myself and trying to learn. And I think the tips I'm sharing today is something I've learned, myself over the last week as well. So number one, I think that, something that you should do at home or in the office is create a schedule. And I think when you're at home, there's more distraction. Your kids may be around. There may be a lot of things going on. And I think that's more important to create a schedule for yourself. But if you're caring for young children or older children like mine, also create a schedule, right? So that there's more rhythm that put in place. And, it allows you to prioritize and, don't forget in your schedule to create focus time, right? Time where you can focus on doing your work and not just attending meeting. Block your calendar and leverage, a capability called My Analytics that we're going to talk about that is part of Office 365 that can block your time automatically.
And you had mentioned it too. You can also have a family break in the schedule, especially in this time. Where we don't know when it will end, that schedule your family time with the older kids, who, by the way, still interrupt, at least in my case.
That's right. Share your schedule, and I think there's ways to do that. Obviously, you can book your calendar, but tell people, right? And I think we've instructed our team in those time of crisis, let us know what you're doing, where you're at. Hopefully you're all at home, right? And not wandering around. But if you're home, tell us when you're available and when you're not. One of the great features of the Microsoft Teams platform, Skype for Business, and any other collaboration platform is you can change your status, available or busy or out, away from my desk, right? And that's important to set expectation for your availability. You can also set up, when to be notified when people post things, in Teams, right? And if you feel like you're going to get distracted, turn it off, right? It's okay to turn this application off and focus on doing your work as well. And then as we all work from home, and I've seen that myself over the last few days, is set some boundaries, right? You're not going to work 24/7. I know it's easy, you're there, but set boundaries when you're going to stop and say, you know what, I've done what I needed to do today. Time to switch off, right? I'm leaving my office. For me, it's I'm moving from one room to the other, and I'm now, not feeling burnout, and I'm able to switch off. So important to share your schedule and also signal your availability. In time of crisis, as ever, and I think I've instructed our team here at Rhythm Digital, you need to over communicate. I know it sounds obvious, but it's very important too, right? We don't know what's happening. We're not seeing people. And I can tell you, we've been preaching this remote work capability with our team for almost 2 years now. So we're used to having people working remotely. And we've always said, be inclusive, let us know. We're not seeing you every day, so communicate. And for us, communication is all done in Microsoft Teams, right? Communicate through team channels, right? You can post something in a channel that other people can see. We've created actually a special channel for us in our organization-wide team for Widom Digital called, I think it's called COVID-19 updates, right? A best practice where people can share their story, more like a water cooler where people can express their frustration or share ideas on how to stay productive. So communication is important, one-on-one, one-to-many, or within a channel of communication with the rest of your team.
I think it's important too, Daniel, that it's not just the group ones, but the individual chats that we normally do, whether on Skype or Teams or other solutions, but also take it that extra level. Don't feel free to identify if the person's available, and then press that call button, and that call button with video. So don't take for granted that you can reach someone. But make sure that you're connecting with them, and we're going to talk about it several times, but video is a great way to do that, and make sure all is good, but to do that.
Yep. So video is critical, right? I've instructed everyone at Widom Digital to only do video meeting, of course, bandwidth permitting. And if the quality is too bad, you can turn it off. But I think we want to feel inclusive, like we're seeing each other. I think video is adding a lot to a conversation. So turn your video on Teams, on Skype, on Zoom, whatever platform you're on. Turn this video on. If you have advanced platforms such as Teams, there's a great feature called background blur. That's blurring everything behind you. So if you have kids playing around or distraction, blur your background. That allows to remove the distraction during a meeting. And soon to be released, it's coming. It's called custom background. You'll be able to actually put an image behind you and make it even more fun or less distracting during a meeting as well. So blur your background, very easy. You can start a meeting blurred, or you can blur it as you go along. So as you do meeting, and you may have, a team of 10, 15, 20, 30, 50 people in the meeting, right? Practice inclusion. That's always a best practice. Of course, now that we all feel a little bit remote and maybe excluded, ask everyone for their input. I actually held a sort of a town hall meeting with Widom Digital folks yesterday. I know there's a lot of anxiety. Scheduled a 30-minute meeting where everyone can come in and just ask questions, right? It was, and I was soliciting input from everyone as well. Don't forget about your mute button. If you're going to talk to someone, if someone is behind you, be respectful and mute your conversation. And then if you feel distracted, right, ask everyone in that meeting if you can record it. Right. Why is that important is, again, if you use Microsoft Teams, recording allow you to create live caption and index the content of the meeting so that, you feel like there's too much going on around you. You don't want to lose track of this meeting. Just record it. Record it so you can look at it later and, of course, search for something important that was said in that meeting as well.
So here, let's do one last poll. We're curious, and this question is not necessarily just for us, but it's also for you to think about. And the poll is, how many meetings would you say you have in a week? And we know a meeting could be a different kind of item for different groups, meeting with a client, meeting with the team. And why it's important is, number one, you could say, wait a second, how many of these actually need to be meetings? And then think about how much time it takes. Daniel talked about, sitting in the same place. The good part about meetings, if there is such a thing as a good part about meetings, is that you get up from your desk usually and you walk somewhere else. So take that into consideration. Thanks for answering. Oh, this is really interesting. Maybe we needed the numbers to be smaller, but about 1/3 across the board have 1 to 5, 5 to 10, and 10 plus. And so, the definition might be different. But think of all those things just had said, especially actually, client meetings. I know we might have some of our own audit, advisory, and tax people on the line. When you're meeting with clients where you used to take notes, again, what a great opportunity to record with permission. And in Microsoft Stream, as Daniel had said, it will automatically create a transcript. So it assists with that attention, not only in a multiple person meeting, but a one-on-one meeting, to make sure, especially maybe you're just not used to it. We've been doing this for 2 years. I'd argue we've been doing this for 10, working remotely and working with a lot of our nationally based clients, not face-to-face. So, don't take anything for granted. So thanks again for sharing that information. Any more about meetings?
More about meetings, and I think, I didn't vote, but I will definitely be in the 26% 10 plus.
Yes, you would.
As a matter of fact, I have to tell you, yesterday I had 12 meetings back to back all day, and by the end of the day I was exhausted. And it's interesting, I never felt the same in the office. So something's going on here with psychology maybe. So again, a bad meeting, don't do too much, right? Set some boundaries, take a break. This graph here is something we're going to talk coming from My Analytics, a feature of the Microsoft and Office 365 platform that tells you and look where you spend your time. I know it sounds scary, but I think it's valuable information. Too often we spend too much time in meetings, or we multitask during a meeting. My Analytics is only available to you, by the way. It's personal to you. We'll sort of, remind you that maybe you're not practicing the best meeting hygiene or the best practices to be efficient. So take a break, especially when working from home. And again, yesterday, I feel like I did not take a break all day, and by 5 p.m. I was exhausted. So don't forget about that. Now, one big thing too is we get it, right? We're all in it together here. We're all working from home. I do have a dog in my house, which yesterday did not stop barking all afternoon. So we get it. I think don't apologize, right? You're working from home. Everyone knows we're all in the same boat. You may have kids screaming. You may have something going on in the background. Do your best to keep working and be efficient, regardless of what your environment is. All right, so here are the tips we looked at, and really focusing on each one of you individually. Create a schedule, more important when you work from home. Communicate more than you usually do. That I cannot emphasize this enough, and use the tool at your disposal. Of course, Microsoft Teams is a great way to communicate. If you're a leader, if you're a manager, if you're a director, if you lead a large team, this is again the time where you need to over communicate. I can tell you that there's a lot of anxiety out there. Just looking at my team, I could sense that people are very anxious, right? They don't know what's going to happen, and I think we're all feeling this anxiety. So communication is how we can relieve some of that. Do video conference if you can instead of audio conferences. This will just give you like the feel that you're still there in the office and more connected. Take some breaks, set some boundaries about what to do, how to do it, when. You're working from home doesn't mean you're working 24/7, right? And lastly, use some of the capability that we're going to talk in a little bit that's available in Office 365 from an artificial intelligence standpoint, to help you with your schedule and pay attention to what you do as well.
Also,
so with that, Adam, I think you're up to talk about something you love, right? Content management.
This is true. And also I wanted to say another thing about boundaries, like another boundary, and specifically in this time is, we have chosen that it's okay not to work normal hours, but you have to tell us what hours you're working. So, people who have kids and two parents working at home, they might have to take shifts. And so, you can allow your team members to say when their shifts are. So when, again, Daniel has shown when they're going to be available, when they're going to be working, and, your expectation is that the work will get done. The time it's done is not quite as important. So focusing on content. So this will probably be a refresher for a lot of the people who are on Office 365 already, but also to think about it for adoption, for being specific when you're not in the office together to make it clear of what to do. Then also, the 10% of people on the call who weren't in Office 365, I'm sure you have similar solutions. So let's just talk about it at a high view and let me remind you. So in the Microsoft 365 suite, we have OneDrive, Teams, and SharePoint. And what I want to talk about in content is working on files together. And so we have these three and they share experiences and services across. But let's focus. So OneDrive is the place that you can actually go, and this is through the browser, on all of your files. So no matter where you are or what you're working on in Office 365, if you go to OneDrive in the browser, you actually can see and access all files anywhere. This is great if we have a lot of projects. We're actually externally sharing, so you can see people you've shared with, and you can see files that have been shared with you. So fantastic, one view into all of your files, and certainly it's about being able to synchronize your files on your desktop, have access to them on your phone. This also, maybe for organizations, there are some out there that have PCs and not laptops. If your team members are going to be using their personal laptops or at home, that's possible. And they can synchronize the files. And we'll talk about, you can even keep them secure, but they have access to everything if it's already in Microsoft 365. Next, let's talk about Teams. So Teams, OneDrive is for you, an individual, and Teams is really working with, the team. We didn't name it, forgive me. You know that. And this is really talking about working with your team, creating viewing files, being able to collaborate simultaneously on PowerPoints. And it's your hub for teamwork, but you can also integrate external applications directly into that central portal. So you work on everything right in that Teams. And then finally, we have SharePoint, as Daniel said, with the capital P, which is really talking about working across your entire organization. It is not just documents, but also news and lists and content management, and a way to distribute the knowledge of your organization. So from the individual experience all the way to the organizational experience. And the thing to remember, and why we really like Microsoft 365, there, I almost did it again, is that all of the file experiences are the same. No matter where you're working on your file, team file, organization file, you only have to train users once, which is really great. And it is not only viewing file types, but all the security we're going to talk about in a little while. And so one of the things that is common across all of these three areas is sharing. And so it's actually even across your desktop. So if you remember, I mentioned Microsoft 365 is from your desktop all the way to the cloud. So here, even if you're on your desktop, you can actually share the same way as if you were online. So next slide, Dana. Thanks. So the interface looks the same. So no matter if you're actually in a Word document, if you're actually in SharePoint, in Teams, in OneDrive, you're pressing the share button. You're getting 4 different choices to share with your entire organization, to share with specific people, even to make something a public link. I don't highly recommend that all the time, because that really could be forwarded to anyone. Or my favorite is doing internal sharing, and you share with the same permissions. So, we work with a lot of organizations across health, not-for-profit, professional services that have clients, have external organizations that they work with. And so here is where you can send a link, but still have control of that document. People a lot of the time talk about security and their question if the cloud is the right place. Now, it seems like a lot of people are in the cloud right now, so probably not this group, but they question security and using the cloud, and they continue to send emails. Once you send that email, you have absolutely no idea who's looked at it, where it's going, where it's been. But using this share button that is the same everywhere, you can control some of those items. And even some of the times you could block download, you can make it view only. So if you're working on a proposal or a document with a team member and you just want them to view it and not actually be able to edit it, you can do that and you don't have to send it to them. They still can access it in Outlook, but it's not available directly to them to forward. So, you know, in Teams itself, you can tag a file in a conversation and talk about it. So you're having the conversation, Daniel mentioned, over communicating. So now that little side conversation that might have happened at the office, and actually it's a good practice even when you're in the office, you can have that conversation as a record when you're in that document and talking about it and talking about your ideas. Then also, you know, I mentioned it just from your computer and moving files from OneDrive so that you can share them and have access to them mobily. One question just came up and asked if you can save as. And certainly it depends on the settings you have. If you use block download, no, you cannot do save as. If you have more advanced features like DLP and the document is encrypted, no, you can't do a save as. Also on mobile devices, if you're using Intune, you can't save that document to your mobile device. You could save it back where it is if you have the permission to actually edit it, but you would not be able to save it to your own drive. So great question. And the answer can vary depending on what you want to do, but you have the capability where you have no other choice, was my simple point.
Yeah, and Adam, to this point, I think that you bring a good point. I think, you know, from people moving from file shares to either OneDrive, SharePoint, on Team, you can continue to do save as, right? You're going to save as, and you're going to say, I'm saving that as to my OneDrive, or I'm saving this to a SharePoint side, or I'm saving this to a Microsoft Teams, right? So from a user experience, people will stay familiar. But, you know, it's important to understand that those sharing capability, those advanced sharing capability requires that your files are stored in one of those cloud services, either OneDrive, SharePoint, or Teams. If you're still using network file shares, well, now's the time to move, right? We can certainly assist you, and we've done very large-scale migration, but now is the time where you need to get those files out of those legacy file system and move them into a modern cloud environment.
And on the next slide, one of the benefits, it's like one of these slight things that I'll remind people about that have Office 365 is the intelligence behind Microsoft 365 isn't just AI and machine learning and Microsoft Graph, which is a really important piece of how productivity happens, but it remembers you. That, you know, we mentioned using personal computers. Maybe someone is quarantined now and they can't go back to the office. Well, as soon as they log in with their Office 365 account, this is Daniel's PowerPoint from this morning. You can see the PowerPoint at the bottom here. So it remembers, and also he could have gone to the shared with me and see not only internal shares, but external shares. And that's just by logging in. So, you know, the amazing productivity that Office 365 knows who you are and puts those pieces wherever you're working. And I say that as a thing that I always try to remember myself. It's a great for those who are not using Office 365 or maybe not using all of the collaboration tools. This is a real big sell. You know, we're working so hard on all of these other things. Now we're talking about having even more distractions when we're not in our comfort zone of working from home, and that's okay. You log in and it knows what you're doing, and you can find items easier than you ever could before. Also, a fun one we couldn't do, well, actually, I think WebEx does have it, but Daniel, you love this, so why don't you talk about
Yeah, so this is a new feature, or it's been around probably about 6 months now in Microsoft Teams, and it can work independently, but something called Microsoft Whiteboard. For those of you that have touch-enabled computers or tablets, you can essentially create whiteboards and share them digitally. And when you're in a meeting, all you have to do is share, and instead of sharing your screen, you go all the way to the right. It's all hidden. You can say share a Microsoft Whiteboard. If you don't see it, it's because it's not enabled in your tenant. But if enabled, you can now share a whiteboard, which means during a meeting, during a one-on-one call with someone, you can start whiteboarding. I'm a very visual person, although my design skills are not that great, as you can see on this slide, but I like to whiteboard as much as I can. So that's a great neat feature. And then next, I think that many of you have seen that we have to practice social distance, and one of the casualty of that has been traveling to meetings or large meetings. So let's say that your annual sales kickoff meeting was just canceled, right? What do you do? Well, guess what? Microsoft has something that's available in the Microsoft 365 platform called Live Events. It has different names. It could be stream events, it could be Microsoft Teams live events. They're all using the same technology. Essentially, those are capability to hold large-scale meetings that are more produced, where you can have multiple presenter, more like a virtual town hall meeting, and you can have up to 10,000 attendees. So that's something that's good to know. You have a large meeting, while Teams or Zoom may have a limit on how many people, or even GoToMeeting, how many people can attend a given meeting. And that's where you need larger solution. And Microsoft 365 Live Events is a great solution to handle this. And by the way, it's not just limited to your folks internally in your organization. It can be open to people outside of your organization that either have or do not have Office 365. So anonymous people, you can produce live events that way as well. So with that, let's talk about, Adam, some security consideration. And let's bring sort of the first picture. I know that that picture is really dear to your heart, knowing that you started that about 7 or 8 years ago, which is trying to make sense of what's in Microsoft 365, right? So lots of great capability, right? And we still need to update a bit that slide, right?
Yeah, we do, not just the logos, but also we started designing this slide where security is a wrapper, and that's why we're showing it here when we start talking about security considerations. And there are actually two questions that sort of appropriate for this. One is, what app do we download on, because it's confusing because there are so many, and we're not helping the case right now. And then another one is talking about how do we secure the cloud from a cloud malfunction or a rogue employee, which is really interesting. And we'll get a little more detail there. So, the cloud itself is redundant, and there have been outages, but is it 4 nines now? 99.999 uptime? Oh, it's 4 nines, 99.99, which I think is a total of 8 minutes of downtime. And your contract with Microsoft and other organizations is actually that you will not ever lose any content. And also that if it hits a threshold that I forget, they'll pay you back the license. So, for a cloud malfunction, it is inconvenient. It is happening across almost all clouds, less and less. You're never going to lose your content.
Right, and let's not forget that we also have versioning. When you use a cloud system like OneDrive, Teams, or SharePoint, any Microsoft 365 cloud system, you have multiple version automatically enabled. So you can go back to the state of a document 2 weeks ago if you wanted to.
Right. And we'll talk about the rogue employee in a second. But here again, stepping back, so what do you get? Why I answered those questions here is because what do you get with the cloud? you're getting all of these features. And just maybe people aren't that familiar with Azure in the sense of they've heard it, oh, you put servers up there, that's the cloud. Actually, Azure is the backbone. And the story I love to tell is I think there are over 30 regions now. A region is made up of 16 data centers, and a data center is over 800,000 servers. Yes, I paused on purpose. 800,000 servers.
Yes.
How many servers we had? Well, we had in our office, what, like a dozen? Yeah, we moved those out. And half of them we didn't need anymore when we went online. So this scale is amazing. And the tools are coming more and more. To the person who asked the question, I responded that it is really a part of where you are in the adoption curve, because Microsoft would love you to use the browser, and Word, PowerPoint, Outlook are almost identical features now, almost, than using the applications themselves. So there are times, especially working from home, and it's actually a pretty good security thing, because we've talked about saving as or downloading. You could limit people only to the browser, and then it could never touch the computer, and you've just had a higher level of security with a little inconvenience. So we'd have to talk about that in more detail. But here you can see all the different features that you're getting with Microsoft 365, and we're here to talk about if you're taking advantage of them. And one that's taking over this slide is Microsoft Teams. But let's slide back into the working from home, and we want to talk about things that you need to consider and look at to make sure that all of your intellectual property is secured the right way as you start this adventure. Daniel,
and that's important. I think one question of someone asked, what is Intune? I'm not familiar with it. Well, Intune is a tool that allows you to inventory all those devices that are connecting to your organizational or business assets, right? Your files, Office 365, and so forth. So, we're all stuck at home now. What device are we going to use? Maybe we had to rush out of the office and didn't bring all the computers we needed. Maybe we're using personal computer. And I think that's where people and companies needs to pay attention, right? Make sure that people are using approved devices, that if they are using personal computer, that they've been enrolled in some sort of a mobile device management capability, which applies policies to those computers. That's what Intune does, by the way. And that ensure that there's protection, what's called endpoint protection, which is protecting the device for malware or other ransomware attack as well. So very important to think about what device people are going to use. Now is a good time to review your security policy, right? We're all working remote. How are we going to access content? Tell people to look out for COVID-19 scam. It's already happening. I know we hate that, but it's already happening, right? So, we're all stressed and anxious. Now is the time to be even more careful than ever. As we all work from home, multi-factor authentication is something that if you haven't implemented on Office 365, you're already behind the ball. You should have done that months ago. Now is the time to do it, right? Because multi-factor authentication allow you to prevent possible attacks and compromising your username and password. Also review what software your employee needs, right? We've talked a lot about, hey, I'm home, I've got Office 365, it's cloud-based, I can work from anywhere, great. But what if you had that accounting system that's stored in a server in your office? How do you access that one, right? So you need to pay attention to this, and that's where companies have looked in the past, leveraging desktop virtualization to access on-premise software, right? Hey, you may be on a panic now, you have to do it yesterday, right? And I think maybe, you still have time to move things into a virtualized desktop environment so that those on-premise applications now can be accessed from anywhere as well. Now, we're all working from home. It's a little bit of a panic. People are anxious. Make sure that working from home is not introducing more risks. What kind of risk? Well, I need to access those files on my server. It's in my office. I'm just going to open it up, right? Too bad, it's crisis. I need my files. Those are the type of behavior we need to watch, right? Don't panic, right? Because if you panic, you're going to introduce new security vulnerability. I can tell you that remote access to a server is very vulnerable if not protected properly. There's been a lot of attacks recently of people trying to attack servers and don't open them up just because you need access and you're in a panic mode. So pay attention to those policies as well. So with that, the last segment, and we're running a little bit behind, Adam, so let's try to wrap this up. Let's talk a little bit about data, right? Because I think that's the fourth component of our area of focus here at Widom Digital. So how about data, Adam?
All right, great. Well, the first thing, especially when you're working from home, is with Power BI, you can bring your spreadsheet to life. You can use the spreadsheet as a source, or you can get multiple sources and make it even more powerful, but that makes it just all that more interactive. All of the pieces you might have explained in a meeting, now you can press a button and people can do it themselves. So even in this time, we're seeing people who want to rapidly update how they're interacting on data, how they're making decisions, and Power BI really allows you to pull all of that together. The next thing is there are a lot of usage analytics. So, normally we suggest these, but certainly now, if you're curious about, I'm not being big brother here, but you're curious about how successful you're being. This is not necessarily to track people's usage, but it's to see how the adoption is taking hold. Daniel mentioned moving from on-premises to the cloud. On the left-hand side, you can see a little bit of an adoption curve, and this is a development environment, but you can see files growing as an administrator. On the right-hand side is a Power BI pack that Microsoft's provided that gives you access into all of the different services that are being provided, and again, adoption, utilization. You can do it by department, so you can check with the owners of those departments about how its adoption is going, especially when working from home and starting to use Teams. And then we had mentioned this a little bit before. There's a piece that's built into the solution that's available to almost all of you right now. So this is a commercial Office 365 license. It would not be available in a personal Office 365 Pro Plus license. But right now, anyone with Office 365 could go to this link, myanalytics.microsoft.com, and see information about themselves. They can change some settings. It is really interesting. It shows you what you're doing. It might not be the most accurate. It might not be true in the sense because it's looking at different things that you might look at. But it is really great to be able to catch yourself, especially on the boundaries. So this will out you if you're checking even your mobile device at 9, 10, 11 p.m. And then the next thing is the workplace analytics. It's not publicly available yet, but you can ask to have it. And it's taking on a grand scale. Again, it's not, while you do have to set up individuals, it's not trying to look at individuals. It's trying to look at your organization and be able to say, hey, maybe it's more efficient to schedule meetings. Hey, look, your people are working late at night. Why is that? And being able to make these decisions on your organization and, more importantly, your people's productivity and work-life balance. So really interesting tools that are coming available to everyone within the Microsoft 365 stack. All right, I did that quick, Daniel.
Thank you, Adam. And I'm seeing my video looks frozen on my computer, but
that's fine.
Hopefully my computer is not losing it.
No, you're fine.
Okay, so yeah, so My Analytics was known previously as Delve Analytics, right? So it's been around for a while. I think a lot of folks don't know about this. I've been using it a lot, something I loved, and that's really great to use.
All right, so why don't we go reiterate the key takeaways or and resources, and then we can start answering a few more questions. So type in the questions that you have. We still have some I've responded to in answers, but we'll go back to them specifically.
Yeah, so the key takeaway, it's not too late to move to Office 365. You can move your office to the cloud, and you can enable a remote work remote work environment. Ensure that everyone at home leverages the power of the platform, Teams, the hub from Teamwork. If you're not on Teams, if you're not on Office 365, Microsoft is now offering a free 6 months Teams trial. And if you're not using Teams, you can deploy it quickly. We're actually working today with a company that's in crisis mode, about 1,200 people, and we had a project plan to do that over the next 4 months, and now we've accelerated that over the next week, right? Because they realized that they can't wait 6 months. They need those technology available today.
I took over the screen to show the slides, Daniel.
I know. I think my PowerPoint is frozen. So anyway, it's time for Q&A, and we do have a lot of Q&A.
Yeah, we do. One question we didn't fully get to, so go back to the top, was about rogue employees. So for rogue employees, that's a long discussion, but there are tools in Office 365. One of them that is available in a standard license that will notify you if people have downloaded too many items. Also for rogue employees, we talked a little bit about multi-factor authentication. That's usually it stops people a tiny bit. There's other, then there are more advanced features. Nothing can stop a rogue employee, but once they take an action, there are intelligences that can catch them in the act. So that's one area where it is, people are the biggest security risk. I'm happy to, I know that's super high level, and happy to answer that in a different question. So if you want to reach out to me separately or Daniel, please do, and we'll happy to talk about that. Then a next question was about Intune. So Microsoft Intune is a solution that comes with Microsoft 365. We won't get into licensing of which level, but basically from the cloud, you can manage all of your devices and you can put policies in place for behaviors. What I was talking about was mobile device management. I always joke, and I know people are here, I'm from New Jersey, so I always say, when you leave New Jersey, you can't share. Oh wait, actually I say it the reverse. When you go into New Jersey, you can't share anymore. So you could do a conditional access policy that's literally about where you are. It could be who you are. It could be department-wise. That go into a lot of different cases there. But more simple is, I'm on a mobile device. I can't save an item to that mobile device. I can only view it. So those are the types of items that we're talking about.
Yeah. Hey, Adam, there's one of my favorite questions people always ask: why are you using GoToWebinar and not Microsoft Teams Live? And you know, a couple of reasons. We've been using GoToWebinar for almost, I don't know, 12, 14 years now. So I think we're so used to it and we know it works. But there's one thing missing with Microsoft Teams Live is for external people to automatically register, right? So essentially there's no self-registration to a Microsoft Teams Live. We have to handle the registration outside, and we've just been a little lazy here and been using GoToWebinar for a while. But I promise everyone, our next big webinar will use Microsoft Teams Live. We need to just test it and make sure that we're comfortable using it. It's just more user adoption than a technical issue. Obviously, it's going to work and work as great as others. And while we're not using Microsoft Teams, is that there's a limit, right? I think we've talked about a limit of 250 participants to a meeting, right? So, webinars are often very popular, and we didn't want to take the risk that we couldn't handle 250 plus people on this, and GoToWebinar has more capability for that.
So someone was asking, I'll generalize this for him because we've been talking back and forth in chat. Does someone have access to Microsoft Teams if they had a personal Office 365 account? And so Daniel slightly mentioned it, and actually I think it's on the screen.
And I think the answer is no, right?
Well, it is no and yes, because there's a 6-month free. But no, usually personal Office 365 is Pro Plus and doesn't actually have the other features. If you have small business, yes, you have access to Microsoft Teams. And then the yes is there is actually a free version of Microsoft Teams that you can have access to. And then the full version Microsoft is offering for free for 6 months. So they're recognizing the need. I was actually just attending the Microsoft MVP Summit, and the adoption, well, I can't say it exactly, is off the charts. So it has been adopted by many people, but my guess to the person who I'm answering is you already have it in your licenses. You just need to turn it on and ask your IT team to turn it on, which is a really good point that we didn't talk about. We saw people still using Skype, and you have Microsoft Teams, but your IT department, I don't know how many people are from the IT department here, can turn Teams on. So Daniel, do you want to just talk a little bit about making that Skype Teams transition?
Yeah. So certainly you can turn it on. I think there's a process and a framework to migrate from Skype for Business to Teams. Yes, we all under pressure and emergency scenarios, so we may not follow the proper guidelines, but if you guys have this challenge, and reach out to us. We've done many Skype for Business to Teams migration. We can assist you. And of course, we can accelerate that, right? Usually it takes 2 to 3 months. If you're a large organization, maybe we'll do it in 2 weeks, right? Because we can wait that long.
Exactly.
And Adam, there was another question about what are the limitations of Microsoft Teams?
Ooh, that's a good one. So why we're talking about live meetings in the first place is, as of right now, you can only have 250 people in a Teams meeting itself. And then basically a live meeting is 251 to, I'm not 100, I think they say 20,000. I'm not sure I want to test that, but Microsoft has done full corporate meetings in Microsoft Live Meeting, which would be above 20,000. So they definitely have tested those boundaries on themselves. So 250 inside a meeting. Then there's another interesting one. I don't know how many organizations on this call are larger than 5,000 people, but in one team, there can only be 5,000 people. So that's another limit. So that's where there's another solution, adding to that confusion from the question before of which app to use. But when you get over 5,000, and if you're talking about broad external communication, you certainly can do pages in SharePoint, but you also can use Yammer for those conversations. But if you're under 5,000, or if you chunk up the different organizations, like departments, into groups that are smaller than 5,000, you can use Teams for each department. And then honestly, what we do a lot of the time is we're doing that organizational communication in news. And each one of those teams on the tabs across the top, hopefully everyone's familiar, you can actually pull in that news feed, or you could even push it into the conversation if you wanted to. So you can communicate with everyone across an organization as large as 40, 50, 100,000 people. And we're working with a 30,000 person organization now. So you can do it, but that's a limitation. That is a great question. I have another one which is interesting about external sharing. I might not be able to answer it directly because there are some things it depends on, but someone who's using an external email access merged into Outlook. So I'm not 100% sure what that means because it can mean a few different things. So you can share with someone. They could have an Office 365 license. You could give someone one of your licenses to Outlook, so it could vary. But the question is, if someone comes in from the outside, do they follow all of the retention protocols and the security? So the key here is you're not actually protecting people. You're protecting the content. So when I made my comments about email before, when you keep your documents in your environment, yes, it's following all of those policies. As soon as a document leaves your environment, you have no control over it unless you have data loss prevention and encryption on that item. So I know that might not be exactly what you were looking for, but I think it sort of answers the question. The security is around the content. It is not actually around the people, although you can do some of that too. So everything, if you keep the content in your environment, is still secured.
Adam, if I can add a point to this as well from an external sharing standpoint, is it's important to know that this is control. There's a policy that control who and how much content can be shared, right? So people may say, you know what, I'm only going to allow people to share from their OneDrive, but if it's a team or SharePoint site, we can't share content, right? So, there may be cases where your company prevent external sharing with people outside of your organization too, right? So, there's control that you can put in place to limit how much content gets shared from where it can get shared as well. And that's where tools like Intune and Azure AD Premium and EMS can help you even be even more granular on how you share content and how you can control access to this content.
Exactly, and thank you for the clarification. This was merging Gmail into Outlook. The Gmail Federation wasn't available till recently, so I'm not 100% sure exactly, but if they're using the system as if they have an Office 365 license, then your controls would work on them. Again, I probably need to talk to see exactly what the situation is. One other question, unfortunately, I don't think we can answer fully. Someone said they had someone run a security scan and that there was a vulnerability. All I can probably say is that vulnerability is probably on the operating system. So there's something called Patch Tuesday, and Microsoft patches the operating system. So you typically want to keep up. The method is to have a test environment to run the patch, make sure that it doesn't mess with any of your applications that you use. Maybe they're custom, maybe they're older. And then once you've found out that those updates are appropriate, then you can move it into all of your laptops. So I know that wasn't very specific. Happy to if you want to email me, try to help. But my guess is that's what it means. Just for the record, one of the things about cloud security is I talked about the size of their content and what the content of their capabilities. They have thousands of people just focused on security. So once the content is there, it is really on their responsibility and part of the contract. But yes, anything on your laptop needs to virus protection and those vulnerabilities to allow people to get access to your network. Great question. Hopefully that helped. I'll send you a message.
Hey, Adam, how can we help clients or prospective clients? What are the type of things that we can be of assistance with?
That's a great question. And maybe I can actually also go to the, hold on, next slide. Yeah, there we go. So there are some key resources. What I don't have here is our email addresses on it, but oh well. Sasha will follow up with that information. But so how are we all helping? I mean, you just named another organization. A lot of people on here already had Office 365, so we could do a rapid review of the Teams administration settings, see how everything has been set up. If we have any immediate recommendations, again, a great way is just through an analysis, being able to understand the situation of, is it personal laptops, is it mobile devices, and then also knowing their licenses, which is another service that we help people if they're part of the 10% that didn't have Microsoft 365. We can get you licenses, get you into Microsoft 365. I wouldn't want to do it too quickly, but we commonly move people from other services into Office 365 email, and then OneDrive is usually the typical path. Then we move forward and do SharePoint and those big, large drives that we were talking about before. That's grand scale. But right now, certainly analysis, certainly best practices with Microsoft Teams. Teams can have templates. So a lot of professional services organizations, have a process, so we can help them do it right even now, and make sure that those templates are in place. So when they work with a new client, that all of the information is organized in the common way that you are working and that your intellectual property dictates, which might be different than the organization next to you. So short version, we can bring our expertise to help you make some quick decisions, and then certainly we can help you implement. Good question. Any other question? Anyone else have questions? I see some thank yous. You're welcome.
No, that was very informative, Adam. I think that seeing how quickly we got interest in this webinar, it's certainly timing, and we were excited that we were able to put that together quickly and help our fellow co-worker here. If there's no more questions, thank you everyone for joining us today. Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Sasha, for setting it up. And everyone stay home, stay healthy, stay secure, and keep everything going. I think that's the best thing we can do, is ensuring that we do our part to keep our economy going.
Great. Have a good day.
Thank you.